Welcome to the Michigan Real Estate Roundtable, a town hall. I'm Lila Lazarus. We have put together one incredible panel. Fasten your seatbelt. We've been on a wild ride in the real estate market, and we know we're in a transitional time. So what's on the horizon in the housing market in the next 6 months? For Southeast Michigan or for Northwest Michigan? Is it a buyer's market? Is it a seller's market? Is there a correction? Is it the right time to buy? Is it the right time to sell? Go ahead and put your questions right there in the chat box. We'll try to get you as many answers as we can. We may have some varying thoughts on where the market's heading. Whether you're looking to buy or whether you're looking to sell, it's important to know which way the market's going. That's where our experts come in. Our panelists for this town hall meeting. From the Real Estate One family of companies, President of Brokerage Services, Dan Elsea. Next to him, the President of Financial Services, Stu Elsea. And for the mortgage perspective, the President of John Adams and Front Street Mortgage, Larry Bsharah. And with Straight Talk on the Numbers, the Manager of Research Department for Real Estate One family of companies, Randy Repicky. And the Senior Analyst in Research, Mitch Peterek. Thank you all for being here, and we're eager to hear what you're going to say. Correct me if I'm wrong. None of us could have predicted what has happened in the last 2 years. First, a global pandemic. And then the real estate market absolutely explodes. Stu, let me start with you. Why did the real estate market take off so fast and so furious?
Well, in March of 20, when the pandemic hit, our business, the real estate business, was shut down. I mean, basically because it was not considered a essential service. So for March, the rest of March and April, I mean, there were very few sales. We couldn't show houses. Fortunately, in May, that order was lifted. We were able to show houses. We started to do business, and business just took off. And we did not expect that at all. A number of factors involved. Interest rates, mortgage rates dropped quite a bit. It went down into the threes. And even in the twos, I think it bottomed out, Larry, probably at about 2.5% on a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. Historic lows. So you had a lot of buyers or people that were perhaps on the fence, thought about buying, and they couldn't pass up on these historical rate decreases. So that certainly brought some buyers into the market. I also think that with the work from home or work from anywhere or hybrid, whatever you want to call it, when the pandemic started, about 50% of the working population was working from home. Now we're at about 20%. But you have a lot of people that, because they could work anywhere or work from home, they weren't tethered to where they work, their office. So they could choose to live in northern Michigan. They could choose to live wherever. So I think that created some real estate transactions. People rethought where they want to live. You also have the factor that if people are spending more time in their home, they reevaluated, is their home the right environment to work? Do they have an office? Do they have certain amenities? So that probably caused some people to rethink what their housing needs were. And the last item really is, you've heard about the great exodus from the workforce. And I think there's a lot of factors involved with that, but retirements are certainly a big factor. We're, as a society, nationally and in Michigan, we're an aging society. We've got a lot of people like some of our ages here that are in retirement, not far off from retirement. And people have saved money, and saving rates were at record levels. And I think you had a lot of retirements, quite frankly. And so retirement is also an event that tends to create a real estate transaction. People now don't need to live, near where they work. They can live wherever. So I think that caused buyers and sellers in the market as well. So those are some of the factors that I think led to unbelievable, much surprise years for 20 and 21.
Two especially. I mean, you mentioned working remote, which just a few years ago, if you would have told your boss, hey, I want to work remote, they would have thought, are you crazy? And then the Great Resignation. In every specific area of life, I mean, there isn't an industry that hasn't been hit with people who are saying, I want to rethink my life. Everything has changed. So it changed how we live. The pandemic changed how we work. the pandemic changed our priorities. And while the entire state of Michigan has been booming, areas like Traverse City are really booming. So, Randy, let me ask you, how's the resort market compared to the rest of the state?
Well, Lila, after in May of 2020, when the markets reopened, there was a flood of people heading up to the Traverse City area and the northern Michigan markets, particularly the waterfront markets. They were booming. People, as Stuart said, weren't necessarily needing to work from home, so they could be working from remote locations like that. Prices, the market took off very quickly, and the average sale price in the Northwest market jumped, on the waterfront properties, jumped 38% since 2019, compared to 2019. And to put that in context versus Southeast Michigan is 33%. So a bigger jump. And one of the things that also happened is the inventory dropped dramatically. It dropped from, the waterfront listings dropped from 337 in May of 2020 to 127. So, just a portion of what we had back then. There were 462 in May of 2019. So we're at about a quarter of what there was, prior to the pandemic. Currently, things are slowing down a bit in that prices have risen, lack of inventory is causing the market to slow a bit, and people are also getting busy where they don't have all the time that they had during the pandemic to hop in a car and drive 4 hours to get up to a second home. So, and then the charts that you see there show also that how the non-waterfront compares to the waterfront properties as far as closed units, average sale price, and new listings. New listings we're seeing are down this year compared to the prior years. Prices are up enormously on the waterfront properties, 63% since 2019, 71% since 2020, but they're slowing, only 9% increase in the past year.
Incredible. Then there's mortgage rates and inflation and worries about the economy. What are some of the economic issues that affect real estate that economists like to refer to as the headwinds and the tailwinds? Stu, let me start with you.
Well, we're definitely in a changing economic environment right now, and we do have some headwinds. The good news, we have some tailwinds as well. Headwinds, I mean, there's data showing that the economy probably is slowing a bit right now. Job growth has been strong, but maybe off a little bit from what it had been. We certainly have higher mortgage rates. That obviously impacts our business. Affordability is actually pretty strong relative to historic standards. However, we've had a large increase in prices, home prices, as well as increase in rates. So we are relatively, our properties are less affordable today than they were a year ago or 2 years ago. And inventory, I mean, inventory is and the chart shows, we've got obviously much lower inventories than we've had. And part of that, and I think that will be corrected over time, but part of that is you have a lot of homeowners that have refied or locked themselves into 3% or sub 3% mortgages. And so they're probably thinking real hard about whether they're going to sell and take on a higher interest rate mortgage. On the tailwind, the positive side of things, real estate is a great hedge against inflation. It's probably a better hedge, frankly, than the stock market. And so I think there are evidence that people are investing in real estate as a hedge to protect themselves against inflation. We also have, demographically, with some real advantages moving forward. We have, on one hand, we have, again, the boomers, like a few of us here, that are going to be selling our properties at some point, maybe downsizing, maybe going into a rental retirement homes, what have you. And then you got, on the other end of it, you got the millennials. Okay, so the millennials will be the largest generation in our history, will be the wealthiest generation in our history, and they believe in home ownership. Now, their home ownership rates right now are probably a bit behind the boomers at the same age group, but all indications, all surveys indicate that the millennials believe in home ownership and want to pursue that. It may just be a little bit delayed, but I think
the quality of those buyers are better today than they were years ago as well.
Right. Yep. Better credit scores and so forth. So I think we've got, long term, we've got the boomers selling and the millennials buying, and that's going to be a big part of the market. We also have we've got mortgage rates that are a little bit higher than we've been used to, but I think as we get inflation more under control, which they expect in the next year or two, mortgage rates, I believe, will come down somewhat. So there's some positives out there to offset some of those headwinds.
Mitch, is this what your research is showing?
Yeah, one of the big head terms that I'm using is quantitative easing, and that's exactly what the Fed is trying to do. They're trying to raise rates to lower demand, and there's not a perfect formula to this. They go up a point, and housing prices stop rising. As you can see at the chart we have pulled up here, showings have exceeded the pre-pandemic numbers. So we're expecting that might to fall off a little bit, as Stu said, with the rising rates, but we do see strong demand, and even stronger than we expected coming out of the pandemic.
Dan, did you want to add to that?
Well, I think Stuart mentioned the millennials, and actually I think you can argue that it was the millennials that really pulled us out of the Great Recession in terms of the housing standpoint, because they hit their first home buying demographic peak about 2012 through now, and we're seeing that demand pull. So when you look at what are headwinds and tailwinds, I think the list that Stuart went through, the tailwinds are longer than the headwinds. The challenge is the headwinds are the short-term feelings that you have now. Rates have gone up, inventories are rising, and you'll see one of the things that as a consumer you should just be aware of is you're going to see headlines about inventories rising 50% from last year. You're going to see sales slowing 10%. And again, it's coming off of peak record numbers. So we have a 45-day supply of inventory now, which is near record low. Well, it was 60 days ago. So yeah, that's a 50% increase. But it's still 3 months supply of inventory is a balanced market. So we're not even halfway to what most people would consider a normal market. So there'll be a lot of noise about the crisis of housing, and we're going from insane to really good.
So you have to put it into perspective.
But one other thing, Lyle and Dan, is some stabilization in the market of stabilizing rates, less appreciation. I think will be good for the overall market. There's less uncertainty out there when there's some stabilization.
What we've been through the last 2 years is not sustainable. It's bad for housing, it's bad for the economy. Even though if you're selling your home, you're just very happy at the price you're getting, the overall pool of the economy and all of our contribution means that it's not good for the long term of healthy housing.
And where does new construction play in all of this? Is there some relief there, and how does supply chain play into all that new construction?
Yeah, that's a great question, because we've definitely been running behind with the pandemic. But if you look back historically and you go back to the 2006 leading up to the housing crash, they were overbuilding. So now we're thinking historically, we don't want to overbuild again. Well, now we've had 14 years of below the 50-year average of single-family housing permits. We're just now catching up to where our demand was. And I believe Randy's pointed out that a lot of those houses that are being built are those upper-end homes, and they're not really building the houses in that demand level, which is, closer to the median sale price.
Yeah, I just want to add that the builders are challenged right now because of the supply chain issues, because of labor shortages. It's hard for them to make money on a more modest priced property, which is exactly what the market needs. so they gravitate towards the high end. So I think once we get inflation down, once we get supply chain under control, labor maybe under control, I think that will bring their costs down, and I think they can expand their market to the more moderate prices.
Just in our lifetime, we've all felt these tremendous highs and tremendous lows in the real estate market. Last time we saw a peak like this, we'd probably have to go back, to 2006. Yeah. Time for that crystal ball. Is there a real estate correction lurking? Does this have comparisons to 2006? Dan's already smiling.
I would. We have a chart. If you can jump ahead a little bit, there's a chart that we compare 2006 to 2000, and we'll jump up in 2022. And in that comparison, you'll see that in most every one of those categories, there is 22 is healthier. The percent of equity that homeowners have now is quite a bit higher. It's 70% now versus 60 back then. Interest rates are lower actually now than they were back then. The household incomes are up, so are values. The only couple things that are a little bit concerning compared to 2006 is inflation is a lot more. It's 8% versus 3%. And there's an affordability index that that the industry uses that compares, can the typical family afford the typical house? And if it's at 100, that's perfect balance. And typically in Michigan, we're in the 120, 130 range. We usually are more affordable than, say, California, which is 50. It's very low. And we've dropped from about 200, so the typical buyer can buy twice the house they're buying, which is why you had all these multiple offers and this activity the last actually 3 or 4 years. Now we're getting down to about 120. So we're getting into that time, and that's mainly because interest rates have jumped and prices have jumped. So that's one, and that's about what it was in 2006. So there's some similarities, but the biggest difference is, one, baby boomers are buying. That's just, there are more buyers right now, more people that want to do something about real estate right now in the U.S. than there have been in the history of our country. So you have that. The demographics, for the most part, always beats economics. So just that push. So that works in comparison. And you have families are healthier financially. Savings rate is up. They don't have the leverage. We don't have all those horrible, crappy, give a loan to my golden retriever times that we had back in 2006, 7, 8.
And a much smaller percentage using the arm than would have been back then.
Much smaller, Larry. I know. Yeah. It's way down.
I'm not sure what the percentage is, but it is way down.
2% now compared to like 26% back in 2000.
And they had what was called negative amortization back then, where you weren't even paying towards the principal while appreciation was going in the wrong direction. So healthier mortgage programs are a huge part of our success in 22.
But Dan, before all this went crazy, we did have a lull, right? So how much is this just catch up, and how much is this just borrowing from the future?
Well, yeah, if you look at from where we were in 2006, is that sort of, because that was our peak before we dropped. Now, the rest of the country, the peak was 2008, but in Michigan, we peaked early, unfortunately. But you look at that till now, and the median sale price averaged about 3.5%. But that includes the 10% that we've had the last couple of years. So that it was a very slow recovery for housing. So what happens when any economic recovery, whether it's housing or anything, nothing goes in a perfect line. It rolls. So we had this down roll and an up roll. So it just took a long time to make up for that 4 years, in essence, of drop. So we didn't get back to those 2006 property values in Southeast Michigan, and actually Northwest too, until 2019. So the last couple of years have been, you could argue that it's a bit of a borrow forward, but a lot of it is catch up. So it's probably 50-50.
So can we, and I don't hate to use the word, can we anticipate a bubble? Is that lurking? And if there is one, will they call it a bubble?
I think overall, we don't believe that there is a bubble. Also the other thing, the factor in the Great Recession that drove prices down were foreclosures. These properties went back to the bank just threw them on the market at any price just to get rid of them. The likelihood of a foreclosure problem like that now is very, very little chance of that. I mean, we've got Dan talked about the equity that people have in their home. If they do get into trouble and can't make their payment, they can put their house on the market and come out of it with equity. Back in 2008, 9, 10, that was not possible. Also, the mortgage products Larry talked about, the crazy mortgage products don't exist today, those subprime type products. So I don't think we're going to see that kind of a downward pressure on prices. So I think that, so we won't have a bubble. Now, there may be some pockets, there may be individual properties where, because of the bidding frenzy that we've had the last couple of years, there may be people that have paid more than market value for a property, and there could be a price adjustment in that case. But overall, we just don't see a bubble.
If I could chime in on this too, one of the things that caused the bubble back in 2006 was supply and demand being out of balance. We had three or four times normal inventory levels, and sales were way down. We do have a couple pieces ahead that kind of illustrate that supply levels are right now in Oakland County. There are 4,600 available listings last month. In 2006, there were almost 30,000, 29,900.
Wow.
So, 5 times as much inventory as there is now. So the supply and demand difference that we have, it's completely different story than what we had back then, which bodes well for there not being, any kind of a bubble that will be bursting. It's almost the opposite. Ask any buyer that's made offers on 5 houses if there's going to be a bubble, and there's not likely that there will be one in the near future. Again, there could be market segments that might be more susceptible to that. But back in 2006 in Oakland County, there was 1.3 listings, or excuse me, the listings to sales ratio was, I'm sorry, I have the wrong piece here. There's a couple of charts ahead. I'm missing a digit in my mind here. It was
13.
Was 13 to 2, and 13 to 1. And this year in Oakland County right now, it's 2.4 to 1. So it's nothing at all like what we had back then.
A totally different market.
Yeah.
But here's a question I know so many people want to know the answer to it. It's, if I buy a house now, 3 to 5 years from now, am I going to be losing on that purchase, or am I safe?
That's the big question, and we feel that there's to step back a little bit. There is a correction going on. The velocity of the market is going from here to here. So whenever you get a change of velocity, that causes people to say what's going on. And for the first time in probably 3 years, 4 years, inventories are more in May of this year. There are more homes available to buy in May of this year than May of last year. So you see, and that was mainly interest rates jump. So you see the first inkling of a change in market, so that makes someone concerned. Am I overpaying now? Because if you're buying that perfect home that you love, you're probably, it may not be 9 offers, but it's probably 4 offers. So you still have that competition, and is it a smart thing to be overpaying and paying over list, I should say? And is that really overpaying? And we don't really see that it is, again, because a good chunk of that feels like overpaying is catching up from prior years, from the last 10 years. And even if it goes down a little bit, the advantage that most homeowners have is that there's some discretionary level of owning a home. You don't have to sell. If the market's settled, you can wait a year or two. And if you look at the long-term history of home values, yes, it rolls, but it rolls up. So if values drop a little bit the next year because rates go up and buyer demand, as Stuart said, rates will probably go back down, which will cause values to go back up. So most people are living in homes now 10 years. So in 3 or 4 years, you'll get your money back. So there's low risk to that.
And to add to that, people have to pay to live somewhere. So if you're comparing what your mortgage payment's going to be with where the values are going to be, mortgage payments are still less expensive than what rents are. For, call it a $300,000 home to rent, you're going to pay close to $3,000, where a mortgage is going to be, with taxes and insurance, is going to be about $2,400 in today's rate environment.
And that will go up.
And that will go up. You have control over your rate, where you don't have control over your rent. The landlord does. You have control over where you live, your mortgage payment, and what home you're going to purchase.
There's so many markets, though, where people are buying the house unseen. Yeah. They take a virtual tour, they buy it. They outbid the guy who was just there in the house, circled the whole place, by thousands and thousands of dollars. Cash offer. Are those days going to sort of wane?
A little bit, I think. I think they will. They'll wane a little bit. There's a different, the basic fundamentals probably won't change, but again, there'll probably be fewer multiple offers. But cash is still king. We have a disproportionate high number from long-term history of cash transactions. 20-25% of transactions are cash now. The old days, it was 8 or 9%. So that's influencing transactions and giving people buying power. A lot of that has to do with the buying power that particularly millennials have, and some of that's that generational wealth transfer. When someone is paying cash, often it's not the buyer paying cash, it's the buyer's family paying cash for the home, but that makes them competitive in the marketplace.
Is this the right time for you to buy? Is it the right time for you to sell? Everywhere we go, people ask the same questions. Take a look at this and we'll be back with some good answers.
Good things come to those who wait. Not in this housing market. Are you ready to sell but feel stuck? This market has its challenges, but there's tremendous opportunity too. And we've got the white horse of real estate solutions. You'll get first dibs on new homes hitting the market with our listing alerts and coming soon listings. We'll even target unlisted houses that match your wish list so we can hit your home goals. And when you find the one, we'll make you the strongest buyer with the most irresistible offer. If you're buying before selling, our bridge loan can free up your down payment and help you avoid an expensive double mortgage. Or if you want to sell fast at a competitive market value, we'll buy your house. And all of this is just scraping the surface. We have even more solutions to help you make your move. Reach out today and we'll send you our full solutions guide. Let's ride.
It's human nature. Our brains have a negativity bias. We always think doom and gloom is just around the corner, and we need to protect ourselves. It's for survival. That's why we have that negativity bias. But I always try to be a little more positive. However, right now, let me be a little more negative. Are we headed for a full-fledged recession? And if we are, what will the housing market look like then? Mitch, you want to answer that one?
Sure. Seeing as I wasn't in the business through the last recession, all I'm going on is...
I'm asking, was he even born?
I'm, the least senior here, but all I do is research it and read my history books and consult those who went through it before me. But, 4 out of the last 6 recessions were not a housing led recession. Obviously, 2008, 2006, that was a different story. Definitely, it's the one that sticks in people's mind. I mentioned earlier with housing new permits for those new construction builds are falling behind. So even builders are scared of overbuilding and overstepping their bounds. But Larry's touched on it too a little bit about how lending standards have tightened quite a bit. The amount of people who are able to get a mortgage under 620 credit score, that's reduced a ton since about 2011, 2012. and affordability is becoming more in control of a buyer's budget. So they're not really stepping up to these next houses.
Just in general, people have better credit scores, correct?
People have better credit scores, and it's not necessarily because of the credit model or anything. People are paying attention to it. People are working on their credit. They're being counseled by mortgage companies and banks and lenders out there on what to do if there is some challenges to work on from a lending or from a credit perspective. But the key, and it's been talked about, is the strength of buyers, mortgage programs. Savings are at an all-time high. The way people are spending their money are smarter and better. And people the first-time buyers are a little bit older. They're a little bit wiser. They have a little bit more job security. The foreclosure rates right now are at the lowest levels they've ever been. Less than 1% of homes out there are going into foreclosure. We might see that increase a little bit as moratoriums as sellers come out of the moratorium that we were put in for COVID. But the strength of the overall market is so much better now that if you do feel, and equities are at an all-time high, if you feel the need to sell because of job or you're being transferred out, it's okay. Put a sign in your market. Don't let it go into foreclosure because the equity is there and buyers are lined up to purchase your home.
Just add that economists are saying that if there is a recession, this will be a very unusual recession in that because unemployment is so low right now, it may tick up a little bit, but this will be maybe one of the lowest unemployment rate recessions we've ever had. So jobs may actually be fairly plentiful even if we have a recession, which is of course good for the housing industry.
Jobs are plentiful. They just don't have workers to build the houses.
Yeah, I think
right?
in that comparison of 2006 and 2022, I think one of the numbers was there are 11.6 million job openings right now, and there were 4 million job openings back in 2006. Wow. So there's slack in the line, I should say. We could have an economic slowdown, and the momentum, whether it's housing or general economy, could absorb a lot of that to minimize it. And I think Mitch said for the last 6 recessions, home values actually went up. The only 2 they went down were housing-led recessions, as she said. So we think this would not be a housing-led recession. There's nothing about housing that would cause that. It's a very healthy market. So therefore, we don't see that values. Now, again, there'll be some markets, as Stuart said, where maybe values won't rise as fast. You do have the warping sort of arbitrage demographic of the boomers that are finally selling. Everyone is delayed. The boomers should have started to sell their homes and move on to whatever the next portion of their lives to become empty nesters about 5 or 6 years ago, but probably more because of the Great Recession, they didn't. So, and they're healthier, they're staying more active, so it's a slow roll. And millennials are also slow to get in the business, but that push forward is just delaying what's going to happen. So it's kind of creating great demand in the future. And it also is creating a little bit of a warp because there are fewer Gen Xers who buy the baby boomer homes. If you go, you've got Y, X, and boomer. So those 4-bedroom suburban colonials that the boomers own, there aren't as many people that want to buy those houses. So that market segment probably won't perform as well as the Royal Oaks and Redfords and where the first-time home buyers are, where you've got millennials that piling up way more than Gen X's. So you have the supply and demand imbalance. And we're seeing a lot of millennials just skip that first home bungalow and go right to the 4-bedroom colonial because the pricing is not that much different. Wow. And so they're taking advantage of that little market arbitrage to take advantage of that.
For the baby boomer who's eager to downsize, or maybe even buy their retirement home or second home, or just a buyer who's ready to invest in the market, should they be waiting for these prices to slow even further and for the rates to go down even further? Randy, let me start with you.
I don't think so. I think that now is still a great time to buy. There's a shortage of inventory. Prices are going to continue to rise. So if somebody can get into a property today, they'll be better off than waiting. Also, even if they have to start at a higher interest rate, they can refinance that rate a few years from now. So it makes sense for them to go ahead and buy now. Another issue with respect to that is taxes. Every year that somebody waits to buy, that puts off buying, property assessments are going up. And they're going up at the same rates as the property values went up a year and a half ago. So they lag behind a year and a half. So they're going to be seeing 10% increases or 20% increases in property assessments. That could be avoided if they buy sooner and lock in, because once they buy, the cap will protect them. The year after they buy, the cap locks in. So there are a lot of reasons for people to go ahead and make that move. It's been mentioned before too that decisions to buy aren't all economic. You have life changes and things that cause a need for purchasing or selling, and but as far as the economic side of it, now is a good time. It's not. I would not wait.
So if you want to buy, how do you structure that offer? What are the terms that will win the bid?
Yeah, so we've talked quite a bit about multiple offers in the past. At the start of the year, we saw some pretty heavy demand. It's because we were giving everyone the same advice that rates were going to rise, and sure enough, they did. And all of our buyers were scrambling and trying to beat each other out. And we do think some of that is going to pull back a little bit here as we enter the summer. But definitely still, those top listings are going to attract all the buyers. The world of Instagram and social media, they're definitely wanting those top prime listings. So, an agent strategy, if you can just have it a little underpriced, you're going to attract a swarm of flies. And if you ask about the conversation of waiting now, and you're going to lose some of that buying power.
But that takes me back to what I asked Dan. Is it nuts then to overbid?
It depends on the house, which is a horrible answer, but
No, that's absolutely the right answer. Is it all depends on the circumstances. It depends on the buyer's circumstances. If you have buyers that have taken a year or a year and a half to buy a home, and they would have been way better off had they done what it took to get an offer accepted early on. And sometimes there's a learning curve for a buyer. They have to lose one or two sometimes before they go, okay, I understand how this works now.
What is a power buyer, and how can that help me win the bid?
Okay, power buyers is sort of a term that some national companies have come up with, but we have a program we consider a power broker program with our house hop program. And the way it works is it takes a buyer who needs a mortgage to purchase a home, but allows them to make a cash offer, so therefore they're competitive with other cash offers. And the way we do that is their offer is cash. We have our company, House Hop, basically will guarantee that offer. So if for some reason that buyer, although they will all in likelihood get a mortgage through John Ennis Mortgage, if for some reason that doesn't happen, then that contract is assigned to House Hop and they purchase the property. So the offer that the buyer is making is not contingent on a mortgage, not contingent on an appraisal. It is truly a cash offer. And whether they purchase it or House Hop, the seller is getting a cash offer with no contingencies.
One of the things that sellers are looking for is low risk if they accept an offer. So something like a cash offer or something equivalent to a cash offer or appraisal gap guarantees, things like that where they take the risk out of whether or not that deal will go through.
it's not always that highest price. There's some other factors that sellers take into account.
That makes them feel a lot more secure. Mm-hmm. Now, through the pandemic, I know we received lots of letters in the mailbox. Do you want to sell your home? How do you feel about selling your house? Is now the time? Is this the peak value? And if I did, where can I go to buy something equivalent that I'll be able to afford? And are they just going to jack up the price? Do I take the next offer? Do I wait? What are you telling people? What are you telling people?
Yeah, that's a great question. We talked about demographics quite a bit, and they're only talking about millennials and the buying power, but there's also this silver wave of retirees who are all in these larger homes, and they want to downsize to those same first-time home buyer houses. They don't need all the space, and they're going after those same homes. Well, they're finding out that those same homes are equal to their larger home, and why would I downsize to live this other lifestyle when I could still keep my space at a similar price? So it really depends on your market and your community, but should ask your realtor where your dollar stretches.
It is a hard decision. I will say that even realtors, as much as we're bullish on the market and where it's going, sometimes we will say, oh my gosh, really? That house went for that? So we're all susceptible to that. But in terms of selling, certainly this is the best time to sell. The question you posed is, all right, now what do we do? If what do we do is, well, I've already bought a home somewhere else, North Florida somewhere, well then of course you're just maximizing your position. If it's I'm going to downsize and buy a smaller home, that works very well too. You're buying the most expensive and something less expensive. The challenging one is if you're moving up. If you're buying a smaller moving, that's where you've got to look at your budget, but also take an honest look at where the market is. And again, as we've said for the last 40 minutes, we don't think the market is that overpriced. We do think you might be borrowing, maybe you are borrowing a little bit in some markets, future versus catch up from past, but we think that over the next few years, certainly the time in which you'll live in that home, you'll catch up. It might dip a little bit, but by the time you're ready to sell, you'll be just fine.
All right, Larry, you're the mortgage man, and mortgage rates play such a big part in all this. So where are the mortgage rates heading? Should we consider an ARM, as so many did way back when? Is it risky?
So to answer your ARM question first, ARMs are a great option for some people. They aren't for everybody, just like a 15-year mortgage isn't for everybody. So having your loan officer, your mortgage originator, talk you through those different options is critical when you're looking at what's available in the marketplace. So yes, ARMs are good for some. Interest rates, my crystal ball tells me that rates are going to be stable throughout the rest of the year. In that low to mid 5 range. Today we closed at about 5%, so today was a good day. And historically speaking, that's still a good rate. It's still a very solid interest rate. But staying in that 5 to 5.5% range, we feel that all of what the Fed's doing with quantitative easing and all the different things to help with inflation, eventually that's going to kick in. But all of that is built into the market, so rates will stay stable, with the anticipation of rates going down over the next 2 years total. So I think Randy said earlier, secure that house payment now, secure that interest rate now. You're in control. You can then refinance later, but buying now, even if rates are a little bit higher, the appreciation of where homes are going will outpace any sort of rate movement. So securing where the prices are, securing your very solid interest rate is always a good play today.
All right, Dan and Stu, this is for you as we move into the home stretch of this. You have the largest top real estate brokerage in all of the Great Lakes state. You have depth, you have knowledge. You're the third generation of a company that's nearly a century old. Considering how young you are, you have such knowledge. The company has probably assisted, I can't even tell you how many thousands of customers buying, selling, investing. Give us your wisdom. Where are we as we move through and out of the pandemic and in through the end of 2022?
Where are we in terms of?
The real estate market.
Yeah.
I think 2022 is going to be probably a little bit of a slower year than this year. We've got, again, the economy is going to drive some of that. I think we'll get lower rates, but we'll also have a slower overall economy. So I think there'll be, but not dramatically different than this year.
You'll see things, for example, like, again, talked about things that headlines you read. You'll see that there'll be a lot of price reductions. It's not that home values are declining, it's that people were pricing themselves ahead of the market. So you'll have those adjustments. Homes values will probably not go up as much. So, but still, it'll be a strong market. And relative to what they experienced last year, it'll feel like a slower market. Relative to what they experienced when they bought or sold a home 4 years ago, it'll be a wild market. So it's all relative to the position that you're in. So I think when the smoke clears, 2022 will be probably in the top 5 best real estate markets in the history of Michigan. 2023 will be probably also maybe in the top 5. Less than other markets, but still very strong.
It'll be so fun to see how the movie unfolds. Yes, Randy?
Yes.
Yeah, I was just, last year, the market took off, very steep incline through June, and then it kind of plateaued, and the prices settled a little bit. It wasn't that values were declining, but it was that the quality of the inventory was picked over. There weren't as many fresh listings hitting the market. So I think that we're going to see some of that happen this year. The second half of the year will slow down a little bit, but again, values will continue to hold, even if prices look like they're dropping off, it's because there aren't as many of the prime listings selling in the second half of the year.
Dan, Stu, Larry, Randy, Mitch, thank you for your incredible knowledge. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for the next Michigan Real Estate Roundtable. We'll be back with another update in just a few months to keep you informed about our ever-changing real estate market. I'm Lila Lazarus. We're glad you tuned in.